Welcome to Tech Leaders Today with your host, Cassie Crossley. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Now here's Cassie Crossley.
Hi, Danny. Thank you for joining Tech Leaders Today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. So Danny Ryan often speaks for Microsoft on technologies such as Sharepoint and Office 365. He has produced technical content for Microsoft on ASP.NET, IIS, SharePoint, Microsoft Office, C#, and SQL Server. He co-authored an ASP.NET book and has created a 7-hour video on building solutions using SharePoint technology. And you're also the VP of Business Development at FreeWills. Can you tell folks more about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm the co-founder of FreeWill. Yeah, a lot of the technical stuff that you mentioned, it's from many, many moons ago. So nowadays, primarily my focus is trying to find the right new clients to work with. So I do a lot of the marketing side of things. And so trying to find the right customers, the right partners to work with, and establish the relationships with those folks. And the technology stuff comes into play, but I usually am pulling someone else from our delivery team into helping nowadays.
Usually when you're working at the level you are working in consulting engagements, you shouldn't be talking technical speak. That can scare people off. It's just goes right over their head. So it seems appropriate that you should be listening more than talking anyway when you're understanding your client's needs.
Absolutely. If I'm doing my job the right way, I'm asking really good questions and then taking the time to listen and really thoughtfully listen. I think Tommy's my brother and other co-founder of FreeWill, and he and I focus in on a lot of the sales activities at FreeWill. He's great at asking great questions and then really reflectively listening to someone and feeding back what they've said and just trying to understand what they're trying to do. And then that's what we're trying to focus in on initially is why are you pulling us in and how can we help? You don't have to be technical to really try to understand that.
Yes, I agree. And we'll get to some of the projects or technologies that you're working with a little bit later, but you have a team of people.
Yes. Yep. We're about 30 or so full-time folks, and then probably half of that in contractors, sort of boutique consulting firm. We try to make it a nice environment to work, focus in on a great lifestyle type of business, and we've got just a great team of folks that we're working with.
I recall, because we worked at Extreme Logic, that a few of the team members went to work for your organization. How do you attract and retain new people as you get on projects, technologies, changes? What are you looking for? Is it hard to find people? Is it difficult to find the right skills? Are you not focusing on technologies? Tell me about that.
Sure. It's really difficult, both from the technology standpoint. For us, it's been a challenge from the sales standpoint as well for finding great people there. Because what we do is very complex sell. And so there's not only a challenge with finding great delivery folks, there's also a challenge with finding great sales folks as well. You're mentioning the folks from Extreme Logic, when it moved after the first year or two from the Danny and Tommy show to more of a kind of small company. A lot of the folks we worked with at Extreme Logic, since it was bought by HP, sort of became from a really small, cohesive company to a really big company. There were a lot of people who were looking for that same type of environment. And I think what Tommy and I were creating, there had a lot of similarities to that. Been real fortunate that folks who left Extreme Logic, if you came to our office, you'd recognize a lot of folks. Primarily how we've grown, and it's the same thing business development wise, which is referrals. The best place for finding great people are people that are a degree away from folks that we already know. They're typically people that you've been in the trenches with before, so you've seen what happens on projects. Not only are they technically competent, but there's a certain type of person that we look for, which actually Tom and I are covering that in our podcast this week, which is the concept of being humbly confident, which is we're trying to find people who are very competent in what they do, yet have this, are very humble at the same time. We find that those types of people really work great on projects. They work together as a team very well. And we really, a lot of the folks who are at FreeWill sort of have that underlying value about themselves. It really has been through referrals. I can characterize maybe the last couple of years when we're trying out new folks. We typically will give a period of time. We've been doing a lot of subcontracts. It's a temp to perm type of thing. So we can both try each other out for a while and see how that goes. For some people, the environment, they love it. For some people, it's not the right place. And so I think a temp to perm has worked out really well where they can try it out for a period of time. Overall, I would say for finding great people, we've got a, sort of a referral program that we have inside of FreeWill. So there's an incentive for people to refer other folks. And then, they just want to work on projects together with those people as well. So that, that's how we find the best people out there.
I love that process of really knowing who you're going to be working with. The community in Atlanta, first of all, I remember them being very connected. I have been in California for 7 years, and I'm not in an area that has as much of those connections or as large community. You've got that going for you, and that's very good. And you have an excellent team there, and I'm sure they brought other excellent resources on because you only want to be working with the best.
Yes. You want to create the right environment for people. Consulting is very difficult work. I mean, you have to guide people in very new things that have come out recently. It's tough work as it is. It's difficult to find people who are great at it. But when you do, you just try to make it a great place to work. And I think a lot of people, with the traveling thing, I think finding some balance. I think Tommy and I really want to see people have not only a great professional life, but also a great personal life. And so we try to create that type of environment for them.
Are you looking to reach technology leaders? Hosting a podcast does have some costs involved. I'm searching for sponsors on this weekly podcast to simply pay for the hosting, editing, and marketing associated with this great podcast. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, please contact me through Twitter or my website, and soon you'll be reaching technology leaders around the world. I want to take it over to the topic of technology. So are there any interesting projects, something that you're very passionate about that you have been working on? What is driving you and your company?
Sure. So we've been primarily focusing on Microsoft. And along with that, you mentioned the ASP.NET, and that was the early web technology. That one of the first things we did as a company was Tommy and I co-authored a book together. And then we started getting into SharePoint very early on. It was sort of Microsoft's de facto collaboration technology. And we did a lot of projects where we were helping people. Sort of the characteristic was, how can we help large teams work together better? These collaborative apps that we were creating, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we were sort of looking from Microsoft, from them as a platform for us to build on. And for us through the years, that has been SharePoint. From a technology standpoint, that's sort of, you'll see all over our website. We sort of say, if we're going to be the best in the world at something, we have to sort of delineate what are we focusing in on. The story for us is from the last almost all of 15 years has been SharePoint. More recently, we've built connectors for other platforms. So people who wanted to connect, sort of do more of the integration types of things. So we built probably a dozen different connectors for anybody from Polycom. We built their connector to most recently Salesforce, where we built a connector for them. So we started using some of their stuff and really liked what we saw. And so we ended up helping them build a connector, and then also starting to build some competency in building apps. And we actually have a couple of integration apps that we have with Salesforce that we built and we made free through the community. And that's kept us sort of on our toes. And what was interesting about Salesforce was they're very focused in on the cloud. Microsoft's getting, great progress, but Salesforce had a lot of things that were sort of built in the way that what they were doing, since they were, just focused in on cloud, that we learned a lot of great things the team did by having a focus in on Salesforce. More recently, it's been it seems like a product a week coming out from Microsoft that's related to Office 365. We've been doing a lot of migration work, so a lot of people getting them migrated over to the cloud. At first looks easy, but then it's very difficult. So we've built some tools to help people with doing those migrations. We partner with a company called Metalogics to do integration. We see a lot of people making the move right now. And so the migrations actually this past year have kept us extremely busy. It's not the sexiest of work, but it's work that needs to happen before we can start really customizing and building apps. They have to be out there on the cloud in the first place.
When you think of SharePoint, I think knowledge content. You don't want to lose that knowledge. So you do need to think about migrating it. It's not something that you just dump because you've moved to a new system. So I can definitely see why those migration projects are critical to your clients. Do you find that as a consulting firm working quite a bit in the Microsoft space, how do you see Microsoft compared to, as you say, the other cloud providers? Where do you feel Microsoft is heading? And I don't want to put you in a bad spot, so.
No, it's like any partnership. There's pros and cons to it, but pretty amazed what, they've got a new CEO, Satya Nadella, and I've been really impressed with what he's done with the company. There's just sort of from a culture standpoint, before it's sort of like, even as a partner, you were sort of all Microsoft and no other, competitors, or they wouldn't play with you even. So from a partner standpoint, it was more for a while in my marketing, I was sort of off by myself saying, all we do is SharePoint. And then, not taking advantage of a lot of the partner related program stuff. They wanted you to be a pure Microsoft partner. Nowadays, oh my gosh, they're doing everything from open source to, when I talk about Salesforce, they've been doing partnership agreements with them. They'll play with almost anybody nowadays. Maybe not Google on the Office side of things, but almost everybody, they've got a really sort of a mentality of just try to focus in on where the people are. I've got more Microsoft apps on my iPhone than I do Apple apps, which is pretty amazing. Just to see how quickly they're trying to say, regardless of what phone you're using, or, I've got a Mac in front of me and also a regular Dell in front of me. They're throwing out software left and right to my Mac like I've never seen before. I'm really impressed with what they've been doing as a partner. There's still some of the old mentality inside of Microsoft, but I see some changes happening that have been very positive over the last couple of years. So they've been a good partner for us to work with. We're very focused in on one of their products, and we want to sort of be the best at that. And there'll be plenty of partners who sort of say they can do it all. We think if we just stay focused in on what we've been great at, we're building new competencies all the time, but we just need to stay focused. And so that's what we've been trying to do.
I'm glad to hear that they're starting to shift. That is a major paradigm shift for them, because for years you felt isolated. I haven't been in the Microsoft world for a number of years, and because they didn't have those partnerships, I lose track. They want to get to me. They need to come to me because I'm not specifically going to them, and I think they're finally seeing that. They need to bring that together. Well, thank you so much. I wanted to see how people could reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yes. So reaching out to me, probably the easiest way is just on Twitter. It's Danny F. Ryan is probably the easiest way to reach out to me. You can also search on LinkedIn, search for Danny Ryan, and the company name is 3Will, spell the number 3, and then WILL, and that's our website as well. Come by the website. You can learn a little bit more about the different types of services that we have. We're always trying to put out great content. That might be another little way that we find new people, is just we're constantly trying to educate the community and share what we've learned. And so I think a lot of people see that and they want to be in that type of environment. And so do you have a 3Will podcast? Tommy and I talk, we get together typically once a week where we pick a subject. As I mentioned earlier, this week we're talking about humble confidence. The delivery folks, I have them do once a quarter, whether either they do a podcast episode or they do a blog post. So a lot of them sort of get down to the line and they're like, okay, I'll do a podcast for you. And so we get together and talk about a technical subject. But to find that, just go to the Three Will website as well. It's underneath resources. There's the Three Will podcast, and it's up in the typical places like iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud.
Thank you so much, Danny, for joining me today.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I wish you the best of luck with this podcast. It was great talking to you, Cassie.
It was great talking to you, too. I want to thank you so much for listening today. If you love this podcast, please do share it with your friends and colleagues, and please leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher because it makes a difference for circulation. For the show notes and other great info, enter your email into the mailing list at techleaderstoday.com. Thank you.